Hello everyone, I am Dr. Ayush Srivastav and I completed my DNB radiology residency last year from Kokilaban Hospital, Mumbai. And I wrote NEET PG in the year 2020 and I managed to score well enough to secure radiology. And I have always wanted to make this video as I felt it can help a lot of people. There must be a lot of you out there who maybe just need some extra guidance or that little push. So many of you must be in a position where once I was very underconfident, not sure of myself. Now, this is not going to be a step by step guide to NEET PG, but rather my own experiences, the things that I have learned over the year, and the mistakes that I have made. And I'm just going to talk about my own processes and my own methodology in a lot of details in this video, so it can be a bit long and extensive. So, yeah, let's get right into it. First, a bit of introduction about myself. So, I did my MBBS from Kempegowda Institute of Medical Sciences, Bangalore, and I wouldn't say I was a very hardworking student throughout MBBS. I somehow managed to pass all the exams in a short period of time, but I never read any big standard books. There's always all kinds of people writing the exam. I would say there are three categories of students. The first category would be the top tier elite students who have been working very hard throughout MBBS, are very smart, and definitely have the potential and are mostly going to crack the exam, get a seat. We all know who those people are, we all have those in our batch. Then the second category of students uh, are ones who definitely have the potential but maybe are not able to put in the right kind of effort, or just not planning well, or just lack the strategy basically. And then category 3 students are those who are there are a lot of category 3 students, people who are not putting enough hard work and are not really in the competition. And that's why the actual competition is mainly only between some top 30 to 40,000 people. Below that, they're not really serious about it and are not really putting in the right kind of effort. Now, before entering the preparation, I was also very underconfident. I never believed in myself. However, throughout the year, I managed to develop a system or do things in a way where I did manage to get a good enough score, and I scored 829 and managed to get a rank of 1299 in the exam. And I'm going to break it down in this video. So before entering the preparation, I think it was during my internship, I was having a conversation with a friend, and we were both talking about NEET, and she goes like, we were talking about how we are going to give our best attempt to NEET PG the next year. And in the conversation, she goes that, yeah, we should definitely aim for a rank of within 1000. And I was a bit taken aback from her sentences, and I go like, for 1k 1000, I was thinking about something like within 10,000. And then it hit me. I realized how, for the same amount of hard work that we were imagining in our heads, we had a completely different idea of an end goal. I realized that I was not even in the competition when I was thinking of preparing in a way to get within 10,000. For what I believed at the time, even getting a rank of within 10,000 was a huge achievement for me. The idea of getting something within 1000 didn't even seem realistic for me. And here I was with this person who was talking about this big ambitious dream, and I realized I was not even in the competition because people were dreaming big and I was nowhere near the competition. And the conversation stayed with me, the feeling stayed with me. until the time came to actually start the preparation. I decided that if I'm going to do this, I need to do this right, and only if I can dream big enough, then only I will reach somewhere near my goal. I had one question in mind, that if I could really give it my all, if I could work as much as physically possible for me, is it really possible for someone like me to get a good rank? That was the question I had. I wanted to find out the answer, and this gave me the initial motivation to start. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is this: getting in the zone. Before you even start studying, you need to first be in the zone, which means you're focused about studying. Studying for NEET should be your top priority, everything else should be a lower priority than your studies. You should understand how big a task NEET really is. You cannot underestimate the exam, and you cannot overestimate yourself. If you're doing any of those things, you don't really deserve to be in the race, because there are so many people who are so dead serious about the exam, like their life depends on it, and it kind of does. So be serious about the exam first. Get in the zone. Understand that you need to focus, and focusing on your studies should be your top priority. Now, how to get in the zone? Here are a few tips. The first thing that you should do is uninstall all the social media apps. Second thing, turn off most, and I would say all of the notifications on your phone. There should not be one single time while you are studying that you should be distracted by a notification. Like, yeah, so just turn off all the notifications. If anyone has to text you something very urgent, they can just call you. Don't worry about it. You won't miss out on anything. Turn off all the notifications from all the messaging apps, and in fact all the apps. Then some people say turning on the grayscale mode on your phone can make it less distracting. There are screen time apps to limit your screen time. Basically, do whatever you can to make using your phone less tempting and to reduce your screen time. Basics. This should be done before you even go into the preparation. Now, in any exam, there are three key factors which are going to govern the momentum or the effectiveness of your studies. The first one is the info retained at any given point of time, which is just your accumulated knowledge which you can reproduce on the day of the exam. The second one is backlog, which shows how good your pacing is. If you're going slow or if you're not fast enough, your backlog will increase, and it will increase exponentially. And that is why we need a very effective strategy to keep backlog in check. And we are going to talk about that in details later. The third one is burnout. We all tend to feel burnout after a certain point of time. Motivation can reduce burnout, but motivation is temporary. Discipline is permanent. In fact, if I have to conclude this entire thing in one word and tell you the key to success for the exam, I would say it is discipline. Because there are so many days where we just don't feel like studying, or our minds just don't work. On your worst days, discipline and routine is what is going to carry you forward. Yeah, even if there are days where you're not at all in the mood, your mind is not at all working. If you have a routine, if you are disciplined, it is going to carry you forward on your worst days. Now, the entire prep phase can be divided into three major phases: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Entering each of these phases, you're going to be in a very different level of info retained, backlog, and burnout. And we are going to be having very different goals in each of these phases. This is how it usually pans out. In the first two phases, you are supposed to complete your entire first reading And in the third phase, the end phase, you're going to have to do your first revision and then a second revision, as well as a third revision within the last 10 to 15 days, which is extremely hard. And that is why, even in the first and second phase, you need to strategize, you need to think in a way how to make that end phase easier, how to make it even possible. Because if you're not doing optimally, if you're not doing well in the first and second phase, your revision phase is not going to be good, and you're not going to be able to revise it 2 to 3 times, which is extremely crucial. Especially that third revision, that last revision in the last 10 to 15 days is kind of the most important thing, which is going to govern your rank. And that 10-15 days of revision is not going to be possible, or it's not going to be effective if you have not prepared for it beforehand. In the beginning, many people start with a more casual and a more relaxed attitude, thinking they will eventually build up momentum and they will eventually start studying well. But then what happens is, first thousands and thousands of people will just surpass you because they're studying every day from day one, and even before that from MBBS. And also the backlog will increase, it will accumulate, and once backlog starts accumulating, it will increase exponentially. And this is the first filter, where it filters out most of the people who have not started well. And you should give your full attention and dedication in the beginning itself, and otherwise you are bound to lag behind. Then comes the middle phase, which I would say is the hardest to survive, because the end is not at all near, and you will be having so many subjects to read, so much of backlog, so many of question banks to solve. It can get very scary, and if you're not doing well from the starting itself, you are going to be crushed by the weight of the entire syllabus, and you're not going to be able to survive, and you're not going to be able to pick up and surpass most of the people if you're going to get serious from the middle. Yeah. Let's talk about backlogs. Backlog is bound to happen. It's possible to have some control over it. The first thing that you're going to do is try to keep backlog as less as possible during the first read itself. Meaning, try to go through the complete topics during the first reading itself. But yeah, that can't always be possible. So the second thing that we need to do is keep a track of every single topic that you leave for later. Write down each and every single topic that you're leaving for later in a common place in some notebook, which we can call the list of backlogs, where you should write down each and every topic uh, from any subject that you're leaving, which you are yet to study. Basically, you should always have a visual representation of your achievements, of everything that you have covered and everything that you are yet to cover. Everything should be represented. If you cannot rely on your mind and your memory that later on you will, you know, someday you will get time and you will read this subject, you will come back to this subject and you will read it. That way you cannot control it. To have more control over it, always have a list. Whenever you have some extra time, you can go back to the list and you can see what all topics you have left, and you can just try to, you know, cover them one by one. Okay, tell me if you find this relatable. No matter what deadline we keep, it's almost never the case that we finish the task on time. There's always something left to do, there's always something more to do. And one thing we are all bound by is we all have 24 hours in a day. And for many of us, it just does not feel enough. I mean, you hear all these people would tell you to study like 10, 12 hours a day. And I always struggle to reach that number. Basically, what I'm trying to say here is, initially, What was happening with me was, no matter how much I was trying to study in whatever time in the day I had, I was not able to properly finish the subject, do the question bank, and then score well in the test. Whereas on the same time, there were so many other people who were doing all these things and were scoring so much better than me, and I was just not understanding how these people were getting enough so much time to do so much. And you also must have felt this before, that how are these people able to read so much, revise, solve all the question banks, and are able to perform so well in the tests and grand tests. And this is something I understood or learned along the way, that I thought this is not how I was going to be able to compete with these people if things were going to go like this. I needed to do something about it. I needed to create more time in order to do some things extra which nobody else was doing at the time, to have an upper hand somehow. And that's where I would like to introduce you to the concept of free pockets of time. So, what are these free pockets of time? These are the times during those activities which do not require too much of your brain, and we usually fill in these times with nothingness or non productive things like using your phone, scrolling Instagram, or just talking to someone. You're having breakfast or dinner, or you're walking to somewhere, breaks between the classes. We usually just fill in these times with something of no value, or even if we feel we want to study something in that small amount of time, if you're not doing it in a planned way, if you're not doing it in a strategic way, you're not going to actually utilize that time. Learn to fill in these free pockets of time with something of value in a planned strategic way, and the key here is to do it in a planned way. That's why I said you should always have a visual representation of things, the things you have left your backlog, the things you want to study, the things you're forgetting, the things you want to revise. All those lists should be there, and you should always have the materials ready to just take out your phone and look through it whenever you have any amount of extra time. And this works perfectly for revisions or for few topics, like things where you have to buy hard things, pharmac or biochemistry. Looking up something or revising something does not take so much of your brain power or so much of your attention, and that's why it might seem like a hard thing to do, but it's not once you get used to it. And you will realize that in a very short amount of time you can revise big topics, you can revise subjects in few weeks or few months if you start doing this in a planned way. Now I'll give you an example. Suppose we want to revise anatomy. It's been a long time we've read anatomy, and there is some part in anatomy which you feel you're weak at. Let's say neuroanatomy. Now take pictures of your neuroanatomy notes, keep it in your phone, keep it ready, and for the next week, whenever you get any extra free pocket of time, you are going to fill it with those screenshots of the neuroanatomy stuff. And once you start doing this, it won't even take a week. Within 2 to 3 days, your neuroanatomy is done. And just like this, you can revise topics. You can do cycles in biochemistry. You can do so much of pharmacology and so many subjects which are so volatile. But if you just keep in touch with those things in a systematic manner, it over time. All this knowledge really accumulates, and your retention really increases. It makes a difference. And another concept behind it is of spaced repetition, that is revising a certain thing after certain periods of time can really reinforce it into your memory. And that's why even if you just glance through the pages after certain periods of time, the topics that you find hard, or especially that the topics that everyone else finds hard, you can have a hold over it just by looking through it or just by going through it after certain periods of time. And you're not even spending your extra study time, you're just taking out your phone while you're doing nothing and just looking through images. Just see how those pages look like. And even if you're not actively reading in that moment, even if you're not using too much of your brain, just just keeping in touch with those uh, pages can really help form memory, which will help you revise those things later on much faster. Like, even if you're not actively reading in those moments, you're just glancing through it and not using too much of your brain, it will really make it a lot easier for you to revise those topics in the end. With good planning and strategy, you can help make your revisions at the end a lot easier than most other people. How effectively you're able to revise everything in the end, it all depends on your long term planning and strategy. You cannot just think that you will just somehow start reading faster at the end and do one more revision. It does not work like that. You will have to prepare for it beforehand in order to be able to revise a lot of things in a short span of time at the end. And that's where we'll talk about short and long term planning and strategy. So, always have a clear vision of what your current day, your next day, your current week, and the next few months are going to look like for you. It should all be planned out on a calendar in front of your desk all the time. And you always need to have a clear, or at least a rough idea of how many days you're going to give to each subject, how many days you're going to give to the entire 19 subjects, so that when you're going to finish your first reading, then how much time you're going to give to revisions. It should all be meticulously planned on a calendar, and it should always be there in front of you to remind you where you are currently and where you are yet to go. Every single night, write down the list of topics that you hope to cover the next day. This is something I picked up at in the very beginning, and it was so beneficial for me. It always kept me focused throughout the day. I always had an idea what my day was going to look like. And any day when I would not do that, I would always be directionless throughout the day, and I would always end up wasting a lot of time deciding what to study. Deciding what to study is something you should do the previous day. It saves a lot of time. I used to write down a list of topics on a sticky note and stick it on in front of my table, and it always kept me focused. I always knew how much I was lagging behind, how much I had to do. Yeah, so that helps a lot. And that's why planning and strategy matters. You should always give a lot of thought into planning, and you should plan well. So let's talk about approach to MCQs. So I always struggled a lot with solving MCQs or solving question banks. I used to never have enough time to solve a lot of question bank, a lot of uh, MCQs based on a certain topic. So what I used to do, uh, whenever I would come across any MCQ in any form, I would take every single MCQ very seriously, and I would always try to give my most sincere attempt even in guessing the answer. And the point is, you should always try to make an educated guess to an MCQ. Doesn't matter whether you have read the topic or not. Whenever you come across an MCQ, Try to think what the question is trying to say, what the examiner is trying to ask. Look at each of the options and try to rule out the options as much as you can. Read the question carefully, read all the answers, and try to rule out each answer one by one, and try to do with with a sincere attempt, with a lot of thinking behind it. It does not matter whether you have read the topic or not, and that way you develop an approach to solving MCQs, because in an exam you will never be knowing answers to the question. It's more of an art which you have to develop throughout the year by solving a lot of, by practicing a lot of MCQs. This art of ruling out the answers, even if you're able to rule out two options in most of the questions, you are increasing your chances of getting the answer right. And even in the final exam, even most of the toppers do not know the answer to each and every question. It's through their learned skill of ruling out the options they're able to come to the most likely answer, and that's how it works. And that's why you should practice a lot of MCQs. You should learn this skill of ruling out options, because that is how you're going to come to the answer in most of the cases. And yeah, that's why you should take every single MCQ seriously, and ideally you should try to solve a lot of question bank. But that is a personal thing. I myself was not able to solve a lot of question bank. Maybe I'll make a video about it later on, about the sources that I used and how much MCQs I was able to do. These are the basic advice that you should keep in mind. Just try to be healthy, eat healthy, get enough sleep, take supplements, take multivitamins, add more antioxidants in your diet. It can help keep your mind a bit sharp. Try to quit or reduce smoking as much as possible, because it is very harmful for your memory, like it clutters your mind. Try to incorporate some form of exercise in your day. Even a smallest, even a little bit of exercise can make a big difference. It can keep you a lot more active, it can keep your mind sharp. Try meditating, it can build concentration, help with your focus. Yeah, so try all these things. And this is mostly it for this video. And I have not gone into any of the technical aspects, as in what sources I used or about my study methods or techniques and stuff like that. Maybe I'll talk about all those things in later videos. So make sure you subscribe, and see you all again next time.